Good morning, everybody. I hope that you guys are all doing well. I am recording from home today. Unfortunately, after 2 years of avoiding it, COVID finally caught me. So if you hear my dog in the background, I sincerely apologize. If he starts barking, I will mute myself real fast. Yeah, I've forgotten what it's like to be home with the dog all day. It's annoying. It's a very small group today. I guess that means that people aren't worried about senioritis and empty nest syndrome. This is something that Yvonne and I both went through last year. Last year, our oldest children graduated from high school. And I've been thinking back and like remembering this topic, that what it was like at this time last year for both of us, but just the anxiety of, oh my gosh, is my kid actually going to graduate? Are they going to finish everything that they have to finish? Because my daughter's grades overall were good, but then you have to pass English, you have to pass government or economics, and I don't even remember which one she was in second semester, but I just remember she's like, yeah, I'll get to it. And last year it was harder because they were, at home and on distance learning. But still, I mean, you've got you just have to finish, just do it. And man, they there was no sense of urgency. Let's just say that. And at the same time, knowing that oh my gosh, my oldest child is graduating from high school. And I think now, how am I going to feel when my youngest child graduates from high school? And so we may have some parents that are going through that. And then you're really facing the empty nest. So that's what we're talking about today, a little bit of sympathy for what it's like to be a parent of a senior right now. Yvonne, what do you remember from this time?
Oh gosh, I never in my wildest dreams thought that it would be an issue for my kid. He did so well in school from kindergarten on, A's and B's always. And I think it was a combination between, being quarantined, and he went through some, depression during that time. But I think it was come maybe April, it was starting to get worrisome because, his teachers / my colleagues were reaching out to me and we're worried about him not turning anything in. It was literally touch and go at the end of the school year with his English class. And I'll never forget, I was harassing this poor English teacher of how close is he to getting a D, and she was dealing with her own emergency. So it was just so stressful. Of course, he crossed the finish line. We thought he was going to get his offer from San Jose State rescinded, which I don't know how he didn't, to be honest. But he graduated and we made it. And looking back at how much he's grown over the last year, and we'll talk about that, I think, next week, about your parenting your adult children and what that looks like. But, I wanted to start off by talking about senioritis. And then I was reading about it. It's not to be confused with junioritis and sophomoritis, but I feel like I get a bout of senioritis every year, and I'm not actually a senior here. But senioritis, in my opinion, is a very real thing. And I like this one article that I found because it talks about why. Why are students at this point at the end of the school year? And actually, there's a myriad of reasons why. And as parents, I think I was more invested in my kids' education senior year than I was in kindergarten helping them make projects. I was so there and invested. It's the culmination of everything that they've learned and everything they've worked for. And these last two classes, Gov and Econ or English, can be the end for these kids. So it's stressful, and I'm starting to feel that stress with a lot of our students here. So maybe your kiddo's a senior, maybe they're not, and maybe they're still having that end of the year difficulty with motivation in general. So what is senioritis? Senioritis is a supposed disorder that makes students less capable of putting effort into school during their final semester, causing lack of motivation and a display of a careless attitude. And careless attitude, I remember saying over and over, I don't know why you don't care. I don't know, I can't make you care. I can't force you to care. And I think at that point he was just done. And so some of the symptoms of senioritis, and remember, some of these symptoms they can also be depression. They kind of overlap sometimes too. So just being aware that is your kid going through depression? Is this senioritis? Do they overlap? If they do. So we're looking at like low energy, just overwhelmingly like miserable and indifferent towards school, daydreaming, like the most severe procrastination that you can ever imagine. Poor hygiene even, is it hard for them to even get up and get out? Are they just done in general, just with the classes, or just like with school? Like some of them are just checked out and done. Lack of concern, or seemingly lack of concern, of upcoming exams, uncompleted homework assignments, tardiness, absences, diminished ability to concentrate. So why does this happen? And one of the main reasons is achievement and perfection. And what I mean by that is, have you had so many commitments that you found it impossible to be outstanding at them? This goal-oriented culture celebrates the pursuit of perfection and achievement. You can hardly stop and enjoy the accomplishment of one goal before being expected to start realizing another one. So constantly striving to achieve new goals can eventually just make you crash and burn. So these kids are burnt out. They've been working 13 years to pursue, getting into a good college, and they're just done, right? So if you think about like what these kids are dealing with their senior year of high school, keeping their GPA up, getting into colleges, doing AP classes, wanting to do like all the fun stuff that's at school, right? All the extracurriculars and prom and all these things. Some of them are working, some of them are trying to like stay healthy and fit and manage their relationships, and some of them are dating, and some of them want to do hobbies and deal with like social media and all these things. And it's like you can't do everything well, right? Even for us, like we don't have the time to be able to do everything well. So for some students that are about to enter the real world, the pressures and expectations are just too much, and I think they just shut down. That was my experience, or that's been my experience with students, of like, I've been caring so much that I can't care anymore. I don't have the capacity to care anymore. Another reason is the finish line mindset. So what's the point of high school? Today, many people would say the whole point is to get into a college. So sometimes these kids get acceptance letters and they figure, I'm done. I got what I wanted. I'm done. And they literally check out, and they don't realize sometimes that their offers can be rescinded, that, maybe they didn't realize that they're skipping out on so many assignments, that maybe they're not even passing their English class, right? So that finish line mindset of like, I'm done. I did it. I got into a UC just like I wanted to, and no, I can't even cross the finish line of high school. That would be a reason that I actually see a lot. And I think part of that played into my own son, of like, he got into San Jose State, right? But didn't realize that like he put that at risk by not doing anything else. Boredom. They've been doing this for 13 years, right? They've been just in school, plugging away, doing all these things. And so I think sometimes they just like check out and get bored. I don't know about you, Jenny, but for me, senior year was this very like terrifying time of like, I'm supposed to have it all figured out. I'm supposed to know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm supposed to start, adulting at this time. And, the way that I handled it was I had really bad anxiety. I just couldn't like process that whole part of my life. And so I have so much empathy for seniors, because they're expected to do well in school, but then they're also expected to have it figured out. And I probably didn't have it figured out until my 30s. So why is the pressure so high for these guys to just like, no? What are your thoughts?
Totally. And I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog galloping around the house, because he decided now is the time to sprint.
No.
And he's a 70-pound dog, so it's not like it's, just little.
Oh,
sorry. I think what you just said, the anxiety of, and this is what, and I'm saying this as a parent who, just had a child last year graduate from high school, but then also as a teacher, because I did teach seniors. Most of my career, seniors are who I taught, because I was a government econ teacher. And I saw this many, many times. And I think it's the anxiety of what's coming next, the unknown, that like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be an adult. I'm about to move out and like live, maybe they're going to college and living in a dorm, but it's their parents aren't going to be there. And like that idea of the safety net is going away. And it's kind of terrifying to the kid, and it's probably something that they're not expressing to their parents, because I think we as parents, are excited for them. We talk about how great it's going to be and we're excited about their future. And then they've got their friends that are excited about it. And I don't know how much they're really admitting that they're also really scared, because it is a really scary, it's something that they can't imagine like what it's going to be like. And that's what I remember from when I was a senior and graduating from high school, like definitely this kind of this anxiety, and we didn't even call it anxiety then, because that was the 90s and like anxiety wasn't a thing back then. But just this nervousness of like, oh gosh, am I going to be able to do this? What is it going to be like? Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be an adult? Am I ready for this? And I think this is a scary time. It's an exciting time for seniors. Like you said, there's prom, there's the end of the year activities. They finish up school earlier than everybody else, because they don't have school that last week of school, it's finals. And so like, there's a lot of like fun stuff, but then it's also this like you were saying, like, I've been in school my whole life, like this is what I've done, and now it's ending, and this like going into the unknown.
Yeah, I always think of it as like this weird, like everything's been so structured for so long. I know what classes I have to take, I know what I have to do, and then all of a sudden it's like you're almost at this like drop off into this abyss of like unknown that's like so unsettling and so frightening. Like you feel like every choice you're going to make can like make or break your whole future. And I have kiddos sitting in here, and sometimes I don't know if this is really true, but in my wonder, I wonder if sometimes kids even like self-sabotage to like avoid to pursue that next part of their life. Like if I just like freeze right now, or maybe they're just frozen and they can't like think that through. But I'm like, maybe they just don't want to go into that next step of like.
I definitely think that's something that happens. I don't know if it always, goes to the extreme where they're successful at it, though I do in my past from when I was a teacher. And then this was many, many years ago. This kid now, he's not a kid anymore, he's an adult, like he's probably in his mid-30s now, because it was pretty early in my career. But I had a student that fully self-sabotaged, brilliant student, did not pass a class that he needed for graduation, and he just blew it off. And I don't know if he like thought he was going to like, but it was just total self-sabotage. And he didn't graduate. And I guess that's a hard life lesson. But I definitely think that is something that happens.
Yeah. And I think like last year when I thought my son wasn't going to graduate or wasn't going to go to San Jose State, like it was so devastating for me, like in a selfish way. Like I know it must have been devastating for him, but as like a parent who's watching this all happen, you feel so helpless. Like it's one of those first realizations where you're like, I absolutely have no say or control over how this all plays out. And my whole family's planning on, celebrating graduation with him. And it might not, like, it was all these thoughts of like, yes, him, I knew he'd be fine eventually. But in that moment of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to my kid, to our family. Like what? Like, it just didn't make sense. So it doesn't mean that, he's a bad kid. It just is. And I think it's just worse right now with like, still like the residual, like, coming through COVID, and now kids have been sick lately, and all this stuff, like there's all these happenings. You mentioned the 90s, and I would wonder, I don't know if parents have any insight to this or feedback on this, but like, what do you think was really different for us growing up, right? Like for me, I knew that I'd apply for colleges and it wasn't so competitive, right? So it's just like, oh, I'm going to go to college, I'm just going to apply and go. And so I know for me that was different, but can you all think of something that was really, truly different for you versus your kids? Because sometimes kids are like, you don't understand. And I'm like, yes, I do. I've been there. But no, when I really like think about it, all the things that are different for them now, all the things that they have access to, all the information they know. I didn't know I can go to like look on a school. We didn't have a school website to look at to be like, what are my chances of getting into this school? Like we just applied and it just happened like that. We didn't have access to so much information. And I think so much information is very overwhelming. So I don't know if you can think of anything, Jenny, it's like for us besides like obviously like social media and
I think
access.
societally, I think I just made up a word in my COVID
Love it. I'm
brain
gonna
fog.
go
I think we're just so much more aware now of the messages that we put out. Like I was just thinking, because we've been planning honor night, and I was talking to Miss Shootman, and we were talking about what information we put out about the kids and the honors. And we used to always say what college they were going to, and we don't do that anymore because it caused like issues and anxiety and depression when like kids heard like, oh, that kid got into that college I wanted to go to, but I didn't get into. So we just don't do that anymore. And I think that when we were growing up, that wasn't something as the adults in the room, I feel like we cared as much about. And I feel like that's like maybe something that's good, that, like a good change, that we do care and we're more aware of that sort of thing. But I think also, I look back as I was looking back on my own social media this time of year, and like a little bit later with my daughter's graduation, and like all the happy pictures that my husband and I posted of my daughter's graduation. Of course, there was so many limits last year. It was only the two of us that could go. And I think about that this year when I get all these parents, emails from parents that they have 35 people that they need to go to graduation. I'm like, last year we had 2. Sorry.
Totally.
But like all of this happy, like, oh yay, but there's none of the stress and angst and everything that like led up to that. And so I think that one thing that our kids have to deal with now is that we've talked about the social media and what they see. And so do they see their friends like celebrating the end of the year and like so happy, and they're not stressed the way they are, and so they feel like, oh my gosh, should I be this stressed? Because we don't tend to put the negative on social media.
I do, that, but
be honest on social media.
Yeah, and another thing I think back when I was, back in the 90s was like there wasn't that pressure of like, if you don't go to college, you're gonna like not make anything of yourself and like you're not gonna be able to survive and buy a house. Like all that stuff that I hear that narrative fed to kids now is like, I didn't think that way. Like it wasn't like a mandatory thing for me. It wasn't like, it was like suggested, and my mom was like, yeah, you should go to college, but it wasn't like, if you want like life to feel a little more simple for you, you're going to need to go to college. And like, it just wasn't that. So maybe that less pressure. I just kind of did what I did and hope for the best, and I don't think teenagers feel like that anymore. It's like, you have to know, you have to have this structure. And I sit with teenagers all day, every day of just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And it's like, you're just going to do one step at a time. That's it. Like our plans don't always work out. Our journeys always take different routes. Like you just have to take it a day at a time. And so, so how do we help them? I don't know that we can prevent or even cure senioritis, but like, how do we support them? I think it's important to acknowledge it, right? Like, hey, I know senioritis is a real thing. I know this is something that it looks like you're struggling with. Like, talk to me, move forward with curiosity and gratitude. What's going on for you? Asking questions without judgment. Like I say that to myself all the time, like ask the question without judgment as much as possible. And if I have judgment, talk about it with my husband and then ask the question to kind of let that off, because, I tend to ask questions with judgment with my kids, right? Express gratitude for how far they've come and how close they are. I know, and acknowledge, like validate, like I know this is a really tough time and I'm so proud of you for getting this far, and we're going to make it through this next couple of weeks together. Make time for relaxation and self-reflection. When you're a student, it's easy to get lost in everything you have to do, that you don't take moments to just breathe. Encourage your kiddos to just breathe. choose priorities. You know, I'm not going to say the priorities are govern English, but I mean, it is what it is, right?
That was going to be my suggestion. I'm looking to on my calendar right now, double check the date. Yeah, it's May 25th, the afternoon of May 25th. That's the senior F deadline. And I would like, as parents, like if you're going through this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is some real practical advice right now. Look and see, what does my child actually have to pass? Because they're likely in 6 classes. And if they have been passing everything up until now, the reality is to graduate, they probably just need to pass their English and their Gov Econ classes. They probably only need to pass 2 classes. I mean, that's the reality. It may, depending on their situation, it may be a little bit more than that. If they have college acceptance, then, they may need to, it may need a little bit more than that. And they may need to be more than just passing. It may need to be C's.
Yeah, that I didn't realize until Ethan was getting it. I was like, oh, we're happy with the D. And they're like, actually, no, for school, he needed a C-. I'm like, I didn't know.
Counselors are like really swamped right now with like stuff. If you are like a parent of a senior right now and you're like, I really don't know, shoot me an email. I will look at their transcript real quick and tell you, okay, this is what you need to look at. And let everything else go. That's what I had to do with my daughter. Like, it's your English class. I think it was economics. I honestly don't remember which, if it was government or economics. And like, this is what you need to do. This is what we need to prioritize. And she ended up doing fine in all of her classes the second semester. Like, it ended up being fine. But like, I think me being like, this is what you need to prioritize, and like really, because what's nice is it's 2 weeks from today, right? There's 2 weeks. That gives like a firm deadline to where you can have some like real goals and be like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to like go through that School Loop or Infinite Campus or Google Classroom or whatever your teachers are using this year. And like, all right, this is boom, 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 and like make a list. And so that's what I did. I like went through and I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to work on today. This is what we're going to work on tomorrow. We scheduled it out. We had a calendar, boom, boom, boom. We're going to get this done. We checked things off, and it was very efficient and like, kind of like, all right, let's go. And you might need to like, this is the end. This is the end. And so, where a lot of times when we talk about high school and we talk about how to parent through high school, and we say, and we had a whole thing about how to let your child fail and all that stuff. Okay, this is the end. This is the time where like, if your kid needs the help, like step in and like, all right, let's do this.
And it's like, it's because like when kids feel like they're just like drowning in the work, sometimes what they need is somebody to just be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because they're like frozen, they're shut down. They can't process that way. They're in survival mode. They can't come up with like a logical plan. And so that was, it. And it's counterintuitive to be like, okay, don't worry about this class and this class, but do this, and even for you that are not, maybe your kids aren't at risk of failing, but they're just like struggling to get through. I mean, the same rules apply of just like, hey, and then sometimes they don't want us to help. Right. But there's times where as a parent, like I felt last year I had to step in. Like, I was like, I can't watch this. I know that I'm supposed to let them fail, but this is like not right now. Like, it wasn't the time. Yes, I just learned that word.
And now yeah,
exactly. Frozen, like just can't. And they need us to just offer that guidance, and you're gonna make it, and they're gonna have a story about it. And he made a joke about it this year, and I was like, it's too soon. I'm not ready to laugh yet, because that was rough.
On the flip side, and we're talking about failing, but I also want to say, because the same date, we put for our valedictorians, and like a teacher to give, like if they're going to give less than an A to our valedictorian candidates, we have kind of the same deadline. If your kid is a valedictorian candidate and they've got to be in a class, tell them not to sweat it. Seriously, it's no big deal. Their GPA is still going to be very high. It's going to be okay if they're not valedictorian. It's being valedictorian for the rest of their life. It is not going to matter. it absolutely isn't, and tell them that it's okay.
Yeah.
It really, because we see the same thing, right? You know, where like a kid for 7 semesters, they've had straight A's, and this last semester, like they just can't do it. Like, and it's okay. It is really, really okay.
And it's easier said than done to tell them that, right? Because it's like, I mean, for me personally, like I prefer when they have that B freshman year. I hate to say it.
For sure. I've always said the best thing that can happen to a kid in high school is they get a B their freshman year. Because it just takes that pressure off. They still have a very high GPA. They are still super smart. They're very, very successful. But the thing is, nobody in their future is going to know if they were valedictorian or not unless they tell them, somebody. Like that is not something that like you get like tattooed on your forehead. Nobody is going to know. And I'm going to tell you, this is, hopefully this person never sees it because they do work in the district, but I work with somebody in this district that works at another school, and I've been in meetings with this person, and he has brought up several times that he was valedictorian, and I always wonder, like, I shoot laser daggers at him, like, who cares? Who cares? It honestly makes me like dislike that person so much every time they say that, and I'm like, woohoo, good for you.
Right? You're like, is that like the height of your life that you have to keep bringing it up? Like, stop. Like, I love it. No,
it really, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. I know it matters to them in the moment, and I totally like validate that. I know they work hard, but really it doesn't, it's not who they are. It doesn't add to their value as a human, right? Like it's just, it is. So we're going to kind of transition from senioritis. So like the end of this year where you want to like strangle your kiddo to all of a sudden it's going to be done. Right. I don't, I have 3. So my first one, he was done last year. So I have 2 more to go, but I can't even imagine. Ginny and I were just talking about like, what are we going to do when it's our last one? How are we going to feel? My last one is going to be a freshman next year. And as we all know, time just like flies by, but we're going to talk a little bit about empty nest syndrome and how I've been talking about this for years, and until I experienced what I experienced, and I'm so dramatic because my kid moved to his college, which is San Jose State, which is 4 miles from my house, and it was still this very dramatic, lost feeling that I had. And I think as a parent, we're just so defined by our role as mom or dad or guardian or whatever. And when we don't have those responsibilities anymore, like I literally, even though I had 2 kids left, felt this sense of like purposeless. Like I just didn't know where I fit in his life anymore. It's really hard. It's really hard to like every day you see your kiddo. And then, all of a sudden it's like, I look forward to the calls a couple times a week, right? It was just like literally devastating for me. Like I had a really hard time with it. And it's kind of fun now to look back. Like for me, it's like fast forward 1 year. He's like, I'm sick of my roommates. I want to live at home. I'm coming home. And now I'm like, I mean, don't you want to give it another shot? Because like for me, it's like 1 less mouth to feed, 1 less mess to clean, right? So it's funny how the perspective has shifted. Last year, I would have given everything for him to say that. And then this year, I'm kind of like, we adjusted. It was actually, and I always welcome him home, but there was that moment of like, ooh, are you sure about that, son? So it gets better. You're gonna experience this for reals this year, aren't you?
I know. So my daughter, as I've said before, ended up going to community college this year. And so still lived at home, but she is going away to Sonoma State in the fall. So in August, she's moving out. And so I've had, there's been a couple of weeks where because her best friend went up to University of Oregon for college. And so for the February break and spring break, she actually went up and visited. So she was gone for a week. So there have been periods where she's been gone. And so I've been like, oh, this is what it's going to be like. And I do, like when last time she was gone, I found myself like, I caught myself like just like wandering into her room just to chat with her. And I'm like, oh, she's not here. And, I mean, it's going to be like, it's because I'm super close with my daughter. I mean, we talk to each other all the time. It's going to be tough. I'm going to have a hard time with it. I mentioned this once like a couple months ago, and my daughter was telling me, like, when she was up at University of Oregon visiting her friend, she's like, oh, my friend Camila, her mom sends her a text message every morning, like, I love you, have a great day. And I was like, is that something you're going to want me to do when you're away? And she's like, well, yeah. So that's my plan. And so I recommend parents do that. Just make that a daily habit of like sending that text. I love you. Have a great day. Because they're going to miss us too. That is something that I do really remember when I went away to college, like how scary it was. And I wanted to like not, and I never like told my parents like that I was scared. I never wanted to admit that. But it was scary for me. And like, if I had gotten, like, we didn't have text messaging, because again, it was the 90s, but like that would have been so nice. I probably would have rolled my eyes a little at it every day, but at the same time, I would have loved it. What about you, Yvonne? Did I freeze?
Oh, you were frozen.
Did I freeze? Am I back? All right, good.
You're back. You're back. You're back.
My home internet is great.
No. So, I never really thought about emptiness as being like a grief process, right? And it says like you're grieving the loss of a lifestyle and relationship that was part of your identity. I'm mom, right? Like that's part of like who I am and what I do. And I think not losing, I don't even use the word losing, but like the transition with our children and you're kind of like losing that identity is like, so like, who am I besides mom, right? And so then I kind of switch to the like, well, I'm a social worker, and it's like, well, at some point I'm going to retire, so without children and without social worker, who am I?
Well, and I think another thing, assuming that you're not a single parent and that you have a partner, what like your relationship with your partner is going to change. My daughter made a comment because we had the Zoom meeting because my son's going into 8th grade next year. And so it was the Washington, D.C. trip. And so we did sign up my son to go on that. And Hannah was like, oh, what are you and dad going to do? Like, you're going to have no kids in the house for a whole week. And I'm like, oh my God, there's going to be no kids. What is that going to do? And it's going to be so weird. And so I think that, for parents that it is their last kid going away, and like that, like, yeah, that relationship, like that, you're parenting because you're your partner, probably, I mean, I know certainly it's true for me, a lot of our conversations revolve around our kids. A lot of like what we do day to day revolves around our kids, and having that be gone, it could be great, it could be really scary.
Yeah. My husband and I did this experiment. We went out to dinner, which we don't ever do. And I said, okay, we're not going to talk about the kids. And what was really kind of funny and dumb is that I started talking about my dog. He's like, I thought you were going to say, you're the communicator and the social worker. I thought you were going to talk about something meaningful. And you're talking about like your dog. And I'm like, I honestly don't know what else to talk about. Like, I'm going to be honest. Like, it was weird. I think I put too much pressure on us to like have a life outside of our children that we don't necessarily have yet. So I'm working on that. But, I think with empty nest, it's like, we're excited that we help get this kid up to this point in their life. So there's excitement. I'm a worry wart, so I'm always worried. So just because they're out of your sight, it doesn't mean you're worried less. I worried about him walking downtown at night and crossing 10th Street, like worry. So there's the worries, there's anxiety, like, relief over like, I got this phase of my life done. Like, just like, so, and then there's just like that sadness that like, oh my God, I wish I would have done better with the time that I had, right? I wish I would have been a more present parent. Like, there's just so many emotions. So I think we think of like emptiness as being like just sadness, but it's it's kind of scary, you know. So, you know, the first one that it lists here is like of just like the sentiments. It's like that like loneliness. And you know, you can text your kid, you can call your kiddo, but there's just something, you know, I always would go in the room before I left for work and like say good morning to him, or you know, tell him to wash the dishes or whatever it was, and just not having him there really felt like there was a empty spot in my house, but also just like in my like soul, I just felt like, you know, like it was incomplete without him. It talks about a loss of purpose. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. Like my first 10 years of his life were like all Ethan, like everything about it was full time. And so to just kind of like invest all that time and then all of a sudden it's just like done. I just didn't feel like I had purpose. I felt like he didn't need me. And you know, it's so bittersweet because you're watching them grow and you're watching them like have fun and be excited about stuff. And I was so happy for him, but I was like almost kind of like sad and hurt. Like I wanted to be a part of that excitement and I wanted to be happy for him. And I'm like, okay, you need to pull yourself together. Like this isn't about you, you know? So that was, you'll see this year, Ginny. She's going to be so excited telling you about all her new people and you're going to love it and be excited for her. But there's going to be this little piece that's like, you want your baby and you want them to need you in that same way. Lack of control, like fear of like lack of control. I had no, and I've shared with the parent group about some of the things my son got into first year on campus. And I had no control over it, over his safety, over whether or not he was making good decisions. I wanted to check on him all the time, but I also wanted to give him space. Like nobody teaches you how to do it. And we'll talk about that next week when we're talking about parenting an adult, right? And what, you know, he even told me this week, he's like, I feel like you should focus your parenting more on the two little ones because I'm like going to be 20. And I'm like, I'm working on it. So just worry, anxiety, sadness, depression, like all these things. It says, how long does empty nest syndrome last? Everybody's different, right? Some people might just be like, I'm so ready for this kid to go away. Like maybe that is. So I don't want you to feel guilty if that's your experience, right? You might be like, we've worked so hard. I'm so excited for him. I'm good. I'm golden. Like go. Like that might be you. That's nothing to feel bad about. But I think typically what I've read is like the first semester of them gone is tough, you know, and then you start to get this new normal in your house. And like I said, now I know when he comes home, I'm like, oh my gosh, my grocery bill went up. There's more dishes in the sink. Like it's just different. And so there's good and bad, right? This is one survey found that it takes parents an average of 3 months to get used to an empty house. And my tune might change when my two younger ones are gone.
I remember when I went away to college and when I came back home, and I went to college in Texas. So like I came back home like at Christmas and then usually for like the summer. And like my parents were always, you know, really happy, obviously really happy to see me. But then I would start to annoy my dad because I got very, you know, opinionated in college. And so I used to like, I would start arguing with him about stuff and he would like, and be like, and every single time it was kind of this race to see like, in this joke in our family, like, how long is it going to take dad to say this to Ginny? And cause he would be like, when are you going back to Texas?
Oh.
Because I would just start to annoy him. You're like, when are you leaving again?
I'm just reading that they break it up into 3 stages. It's grief, relief, joy. So your dad was probably like straight to the relief phase. But it's true. Like you'll notice like you're like, man, I did a lot for that kid. And when he's here, it's kind of a reminder of, you know, all the things that I've done for him. I'm like, oh, that's right. I bring him food while he was doing his homework and all these things that he still kind of expects me to do. But the grief was real. The relief is, I don't know that I felt strongly. It says after a few months, you might find yourself relishing your newfound freedom. One of the things that stands out to me, and it sounds so dumb now that I say it, is that like taking 2 kids out to dinner is significantly cheaper than taking 3. So like, it's easier. Like if I don't want to cook and we order out, like it's not that big of a deal. There's only 2 of them, so there was relief in that sense. And then the housekeeping and, driving people around and that thing. But I think I'm finally experiencing that like joy of watching him become a young man. There's challenges with it that I'll talk about next week when it comes to dating and all that stuff. But truly, like, man, he's come so far. He's so independent. He orders his own food. He took his car for an oil change yesterday. Like all these things that I didn't know that he would be able to do because of like anxiety and just being shy. I'm really like, I'm like proud of him, and I guess joy would be a good word. It talks about which parents are more susceptible, and I'm like, check box on all of these. Helicopter parents, stay-at-home parents, single parents, definitely. Parents who rely on their parent roles for self-identity. And then the last one is parents who are having marital struggles. You get to focus all your energy on your kids, and then all of a sudden your kids leave and it exposes what's going on at home, right, with your partner, and you can only talk about your dog, right? Like what's happening. I think it does, it gives us this interesting perspective of like, who are we now that our kids are grown? And and I don't know if anybody here senior or that or has experienced it. Any words of wisdom, if you will. I'm not totally through it yet. Definitely getting there, and I've watched myself kind of evolve through this whole process. And like I said, I'm really proud of how far he is. So how do you adjust? How do you deal? And Ginny, again, I'm going to be bugging you next year with how your experience is going. I try to focus on my younger ones. It says make social connections. You have to have a life, right? I tell people who are retiring, who are losing like kids in the house, like if you don't have your own life, this is going to be exceptionally painful, because what do you have, right? So using free time to connect with your old friends. Don't neglect your social relationships. Our social connections are so important. And a lot of times we lose sight of those because we're hyper focused on our kids. So really try to enter into like this new social space where you're connecting with people. It's a healthy distraction and it's fun, like you forget that like, oh yeah, I'm fun and my friends like to hang out with me.
Yeah, I think about all those
just so
all those invitations you've turned down for stuff in the middle of the week because you're like, no, the kids have school and like homework and everything. That's not going to be a thing anymore. And like, I think that like, think about the excitement of it's this next phase in your life. And yeah, change is always hard and it can be really scary, but it can also be exciting and like new opportunities and like a new it's a new phase in your kid's life, but it's also a new phase in your parenting life. And like, I think that's what we'll like next week. Our topic is having an adult child. And that is something that I've discovered. Even though she's still been living at home, it is totally different. And having an adult child, and I'm loving it. I love having an adult child. It's honestly, it's so much more fun than having a teenage child. Like it is, where, it's like your reward of getting through the teenage years, like having that adult kid like that. It's, and we'll get into that next year, but it's definitely something to look forward to.
You're hoping to give me some words of advice because I'm not quite to like love it yet. So I mean, basically to like get through this whole phase, it's keep your connections, make connections. I was laughing when you were talking about like do all these things now. My worry has been that, like when my last kid moves out, I will not have my kids as an excuse to not go do things.
Oh, that's true.
I don't know if you thought about that. I gotta go home and feed
this goes to our topic of was it last week we talked about the beauty of being in your 40s and getting older. The power of saying no. I don't have a problem with that, where I'm just like, no, I'm too old.
That's true. So keep your social connections. If you need to seek professional help, I was probably like on the cusp of like, okay, I need to talk to somebody because I'm going to fall apart. But I made it. Setting goals for your future. I don't know if I was talking about this last week, but it's like in life you have all these goals, and then all of a sudden you're at this phase of your life where you've kind of hit all of them, like of the ones that I really thought. So it's like I have to continue to set goals for myself, whether they're like physical goals or emotional goals or social goal or whatever they are, to keep myself moving in a forward direction. So set up goals, take up a new hobby or career. I don't know about that yet. I have been exercising more, so maybe I'll call that a hobby. And then lastly, it says reconnect with your partner. An empty nest is a perfect opportunity to spend quality time with significant others. And if you don't, then connect with your friends. Use this new space and time. It says, Jenny, you ready for this one? To reignite the romance in your relationship.
My husband, who's downstairs with COVID also. God.
So you have this time home to reconnect your romance and reignite it. Oh, and actually that wasn't the last one.
We discovered our love of Netflix. So
oh, actually there's two more. Practice self-care, which can be saying no. Focus on the positives and keep in touch with your kiddos. So that's what I got. I mean, that's been my experience, and you're going to make it through. And it is really like a cool thing to be like, I made that grown up. I raised him. He's a decent guy. Like I'm really proud, and, did the best I could. Nobody tells us what to do, and nobody tells us how to process all of this. And so we're all in it together. And whatever stage your kiddo's in, if they're freshmen, enjoy it. It goes by so fast. It's so cliche. And if they're seniors and they're ready to make this transition, like embrace that, and eventually you'll feel relieved and joyful. So, and that's what I got for us today.
Thank you. I think this is a great place to end. Like I said, if you are a parent of a senior and you're like, oh my gosh, we have to get through this. It's just 2 more weeks and get through it. Like, make that plan, get through the next 2 weeks. If you are the parent of everybody else, it's 3 more weeks. This has been a really long school year. It's been a really hard school year, but we'll get through it. And then we get to enjoy our summer. So like I said, next week, we only have, speaking of 2 weeks, we only have 2 more weeks of Zoom with the principal topics and talks. Next week, we're going to talk about having an adult child. The week after that, we're going to be talking about goal setting for the summer and modeling self-care over the summer, which is, I think, a great thing to end on. The last week of school on June 1st, we're not actually going to have a Zoom with the principal because I have to be at graduation practice at this exact time. So have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Like, if you missed the beginning, I am out right now with COVID. It finally caught up to me. I feel better today. I feel like every day I'm getting like 3-4% better. So I definitely feel better today. The brain.
Well, that doesn't put you at 100% by graduation.
Not 100% yet. The brain fog is a lot better today. Okay. Monday it hurt to think. It was unreal. It's a lot. It's getting a lot better. But I don't think I'm going to make it past I'm not at the point yet where I can test after 5 days. I don't think I'm going to, I'm
stay home and rest.
Testing positive still. But I will be back next week. So
good. Rest. And I see your kitty behind you.
Yeah.
All right, everyone.
Thank you so much. I gotta go watch Netflix right now.
Okay, have fun.
Bye.
Bye.